You're listening to the Daily Mishnah podcast with Benedict.
So we're still in the 7th chapter of Sotah, and we're going through this list of recitations that have to be recited in Hebrew. And we learnt actually that the blessings and the curses on Har Gerizim and Har Eval, on Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval, are recited in Hebrew because, well, we learned that God speaks Hebrew, and so the Levim speak Hebrew. But the Mishnah then goes on to talk about Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing. Birkat Kohanim Keitzad. And you might ask, well, how do we know that Birkat Kohanim is recited in Hebrew at all? And the Talmud does bring a verse to support it. It's a famous verse. Daber, it's from Bamidbar, from Nassau. Daber el Aharon ve'el banav lemor, speak to Aaron and his sons. Ko tevarechu et bnei Yisrael amor lahem. Thus you shall bless the people of Israel, say to them. And it's very specific. It says, Ko tumar, thus you shall say. So the Talmud says, okay, fine. We've been told specifically that this bracha has to be said this way, so it has to be said in Hebrew. That's why it comes in our list. But there are different ways of saying it. And we'll see. Birkat Kohanim Keitzad, how is the priestly blessing? In the provinces, it is said as 3 blessings. And I guess we're familiar with that from practice in the synagogue today. It's, we say the Kohanim say 3 blessings, and we say Amen after each blessing. But that wasn't how they did that, apparently, in the temple. Uvamikdash bracha achat. In the temple, there was only one bracha. So they would say all 3 of the brachot. And then the people would listen to all 3. They wouldn't say Amen in the middle. And then right at the end, they would say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Right at the end, they'd answer and they'd say, blessed is the name of God. That's how they did it in the temple. And there are other differences too. Bamikdash Omrim et Hashem Ki Ktovo. In the temple, they'd say the name as it is written. In other words, they read God's name, the Yud Hey Vav Hey. Uva Medina Bekinuyo. And in the provinces, it's, well, I've said here euphemism. I mean, we say Adonai instead of God's name. It's a corregative, it's a euphemism. We only use the real name in the temple. In the provinces, the priests raise their hands to their shoulders. We see that actually in synagogue today. They throw their hands out like that. Uvamikdash hayu al gabei rashehem. In the temple, they lift their hands right above their heads. And actually, Rabbi Yehuda is going to bring a verse from this. It's from Parashat Shemini in Vayikra. It's the inauguration of Aaron the Kohen. And when his inauguration is finished, he lifts up his hands and he blesses the people. The verse says, Vayisa Aaron et Yadav. Vayisa Aaron et Yadav. He lifted up his hands. Aaron lifted up his hands. El ha'am va yivarachem. He lifted up his hands to the people and he blessed them. So there's the association of lifting and blessing. And that's how Rabbi Yehuda knows that in the temple, or that's how we know. It's the verse that Rabbi Yehuda brings, but that's how we know that in the temple, the priests used to lift their hands up above their heads. And apparently, but this is really interesting, apparently the Kohen Gadol did not. Chutz mi Kohen Gadol, she'eino magbiya et yadav l'malim min hatzitz. The high priest wouldn't lift his hands higher than the tzitz. It's really interesting because makes you think, well, hang on, what did Aaron do first time round? Maybe, anyway. And there is a verse. Let's look at the description of the tzitz in Tetzaveh. Okay, in Parshat Tetzaveh, thank you. Ve'asita tzitz zahavta. Are you going to make a tzitz? This is something that the Kohen Gadol is going to wear on his forehead. Ufitakta alav pituchei chotam, and you're going to engrave on it like the engravings of a stamp. Kodesh Lashem, holy to God. We're going to actually put the name of God on the tzitz, which the Kohen Gadol is going to wear on his forehead. It's part of the priestly garments. That's why it's in Parashat Tetzaveh. And so the Mishnah seems to be saying, look, the Kohen Gadol has got the name of God written here on his forehead. So he's not going to lift his hands above the name of God. That seems to be what the Mishnah is saying. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, by the way. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af Kohen Gadol Magbiet Yadav Lemala Min Hatzitz. Rabbi Yehuda uses our pasuk, and he says even the Kohen Gadol lifts his hands above the tzitz, because we know by Aaron et Yadav because we know Aaron lifted his hands towards the people, and he blessed them. And the Rambam tells us that the halacha does not go according to Rabbi Yehuda. Let's look then at one more set of blessings. So we've had Birkat Kohanim, the blessings of the Kohanim with which they bless the people. Now let's look at the bracha of the Kohen Gadol. Birchot Kohen Gadol Keitzad. How are the blessings of the high priest? Now, this is not actually the blessing of the people. This is not the Birkat Kohanim that we know. This is not the blessings of the people. These are the blessings after the Torah reading on Yom Kippur. And we've learned this Mishnah before, by the way, in Yoma. This Mishnah comes in Yoma. And it describes the reading of the Torah and the Haftarah on Yom Kippur. And the brachot. The brachot after the Haftarah are the brachot of the high priest. And so this will be very familiar to us. Chazan Knesset notel sefer Torah v'nonol rosh Knesset. So the synagogue Chazan takes the Torah scroll and he gives it to the head of the synagogue. V'rosh Knesset notnol lasegen, and the head of the synagogue gives it to the deputy. V'hasegen notnol Kohen Gadol, and the deputy gives it to the high priest. V'Kohen Gadol omed, and the high priest stands up. When we read from the Torah, we always stand up. Not like the Megillah. V'koreh achrei mot ve'ach be'asor. And then he reads after the death and on the 10th. After the death, that's the parsha of achrei mot, which is the order of Yom Kippur, and ach be'asor is from the parsha of Emor. It just comes just a few columns on in the Sefer Torah. So it's really easy to scroll on from Acharei Mot to Emor. Then, Vegolelet HaTorah umanicho b'tcheiko ve'omer yoter mima shekariti lifnechem katuv. And then he rolls up the Torah scroll and he puts it in his bosom and he says, more than what I've read out for you is written here. Because he's now going to read from Bamidbar. Now, we don't roll the scroll all the way from Emor to it's actually in Pinchas he's going to read from. We're not going to roll from Emor to Pinchas while the community's waiting, because it's insulting to the community to make them hang around while the scroll is being read. So he's going to read this by heart. So what does he say? But he doesn't want to, disrespect the Sefer Torah. So he says, okay, it is written there, but he's going to read by heart. And in the text that begins Be'asor, that is on the 10th month, the word for the Sefer B'Binbar in the Mishnah is Chumash HaPkudim, the fifth book, the book of the Chumash, that's all the counts, the counting, book of numbers really. And he reads off by heart. And now here we come to the brachot. Umvarech aleha shemona brachot. And he blesses on it 8 blessings. So what are the 8 blessings? And well, these are really familiar from the Haftarah blessings that we say today. So we can see, by the way, the roots of our current synagogue practice. I mean, standing up to read the Torah readings for Yom Kippur, and the brachot afterwards, although we don't have quite as many as 8. So what are the blessings? Torah, for the Torah. Ve'al ha'avodah, we know this one, for the service. Ve'al ha'hodaya, for the thanksgiving. Ve'al mechilat ha'avon, for the forgiveness of sins. Ve'al ha'mikdash, for the temple. Ve'al Yisrael, for the people of Israel. Ve'al ha'kohanim, for the priests. Ve'al sha'ar ha'tfilah, and for the rest of the tefillah.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Daily Mishnah Podcast with Benedict.